Hey everyone, welcome back to the Kima SDK tutorial series. If you're new here, I'm Bastian, developer at Kima, and I'll be guiding you through everything you need to know about using the Kima SDK. In our last video, we set up Kepler, connected to Kima testnet, and got some test tokens. Now, before we start writing any code, we need to understand what the Kima SDK actually is and how it works. In this video, we break down the two main parts of the SDK, the backend and the frontend widget. Explain what each part does and how they interact. Go over the full transaction lifecycle, including wallet connection, approval, and tracking the transaction status. The Kima SDK is the toolkit that allows developers to easily transfer stablecoins between different blockchains. This means you can send USDC, USDT, or other stable assets from one chain to another seamlessly. But to make this work, the SDK is split into two main components. The backend, which handles transaction requests, compliance checks, and interaction with the blockchain. And the frontend widget, a plug-and-play UI component that users interact with to send transactions. Both parts work together to make cross-chain transfer possible. Let's start with the backend. The backend is the brain of the SDK, responsible for retrieving the available chains, providing information on which blockchains are supported, fetching pools, checking the available liquidity pools for transactions, calculating fees, determining how much each transaction will cost, checking compliance, ensuring wallet addresses comply with regulatory policies, validating transactions, making sure transaction requests are formatted correctly, and finally, submitting transaction requests. As the backend does not send stablecoins, instead, it sends the transaction request to the blockchain for execution. Without the backend, the frontend would just be a UI with no real functionality. This will actually makes the transfers happen. In the next video, we'll install the backend and run it locally. Now let's talk about the frontend. This is the Kima transaction widget, which is a plug-and-play component that you can embed in your app. It allows users to connect their wallet in any of our supported EVM chains, and also Tron and Solana. Approve an allowance on the source chain before submitting transactions, enter the amount and chain details for the transfer, and finally, submit transactions and track their status until completion. So how do the backend and the frontend communicate? When the frontend initializes, it first retrieves key settings from the backend, such as the network option, which can be testnet or mainnet, the explorer URL for checking the transactions, the available chains and pools of the blockchains and liquidity pools that can be used, and finally, fees and compliance check. If enabled, the backend ensures that wallet addresses comply with regulations. Now, the frontend is fully initialized and ready for user interaction. This is an example of a step-by-step process of how a cross-chain stablecoin transfer works with the Kima SDK. At first, the user connects their wallet, enters the transaction details, such as the amount, the source and target chains, and the recipient address. Then, the frontend retrieves the transaction fees from the backend, and if enabled, performs a compliance check for the wallet addresses. After that, the user approves the allowance on the source chain, so the Kima pool can retrieve the tokens. Then, the user submits the transaction, and the frontend validates all details. After that, it sends a transaction request to the backend, which also verifies and finally submits the transaction to the blockchain. Finally, the frontend polls the transaction status until completion. With this setup, a stablecoin transfer between chains are seamless and secure. That's it. In this video, we cover what the Kima SDK is and how it works, the backend's role in retrieving chains, pools, fees, checking compliance, validating transactions, and submitting requests to the blockchain. We also reviewed the frontend widget and how it interacts with the backend. Finally, we saw an example of a full transaction lifecycle, including wallet connection, approving allowance, and tracking the transaction status. In the next video, we'll install and configure the backend so we can start processing transactions. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to get notified for the next videos. Like this video if it helped you understand the SDK, and drop a comment if you have any questions. See you in the next one.